and going through the setup. So today is all about looking at, are you on the fast track to leadership development, and showing you the key elements about being able to transform from just an average performing manager, which are most of the people out there, into a high performing, highly engaging, effective leader that actually works less hours but has more productivity and impact. And a little bit about me, just a bit of background on who I am. I'm a Collingwood member and supporter. So for those of you who follow the AFL, some people know about Collingwood. Some people don't like Collingwood very much. We won the premiership last year, so sometimes I get people who challenge me at this point. It's something that I love, going to the games, and that's a photo there of me with my partner and my son at last year's grand final. I also like keeping fit. I've played many sports, and I've run in a variety of different fun runs. So that's me trudging along in one of the fun runs there. Over the years, though, what's become my passion is leadership. So the photo down the bottom is one of the groups that I facilitated, leadership development program a few years ago. One of many hundreds of people that I've worked with through the different programs, group programs and coaching programs. And my passion and purpose today is to help create more engaging leaders, so that leaders can create more healthy and engaging teams. And little bit by little bit through those teams, we can create organisations and communities to be a better place. So that's my belief and my purpose, that really positive, engaging leaders can create an environment for positive change. So a little bit more about me. I first became a manager in my late 20s. I was doing well in the area that I was working in, which is sales and marketing at the time. And they put me into the management role because I was the one with the most experience in getting the best results. Didn't have any training. So thrown in the deep end and tried to be able to grow with that through the trial and error approach, okay, which is what happens with most people. And I worked long hours and thought I was doing really well in that area. I was getting pretty good results, right? But eventually I got some leadership training. This is about 7 years into my leadership and management career, and it opened a whole new door for me in terms of what it meant to be effective as a manager and as a leader. And then all of a sudden, my improvement changed significantly. Within a year, I improved much more than I had in the previous 7 years, where I was trying to do it myself through trial and error. And then with this transition for me, others started to ask me about some advice and helping them. So eventually I moved into becoming a leadership coach, and part of this was also because I wanted to reduce the travel and the hours that I was doing with corporates while my kids were still at school and before they'd grown up fully, which they are now. And I've run training for well over 1,500 people in different groups, like the group you saw in the photo earlier. And I've coached individually over 300 managers who have all got some really positive and amazing results, like being able to work less hours, have more confidence, have a balanced life, get more promotions and earn more even while they're working less hours, and hit targets and have a motivated team. Okay. And just feel better about themselves and the work that they're doing through their job satisfaction. So what I'm going to do now is tell you a little bit about what's typically happening in most organisations, and what you can do differently to get off the slow track, like I was on when I first started, and onto the fast track of being effective as a leader. Okay. So this is firstly a picture of what's typically happening, the problem that most organisations are facing without even realising it in a lot of ways. So for most managers, well over 90% of managers, they get thrown in the deep end. They're either the best performing, they're the most technical, or the people who have had most experience. And the organisation says, right, you have been the one with the most experience, so you can be a manager. But don't stop to think that being a people manager is different from being able to do your job. Okay. And so what happens is that it doesn't work all that effectively. The people go into the management role, work longer and get more overwhelmed and stressed about it, and senior management have to provide them with more support, and they can often get frustrated around that, get frustrated around the fact that they want the business to grow and develop, and it seems to be not able to do that because of the way that the managers and the teams are operating. And there's usually some issues with engagement and with staff turnover. Okay, not usually really, really massive, but things that can make quite a difference if they could change by a reasonable amount, and you can make that change. Okay. The other thing that happens in a lot of organisations, so between these two, it's probably about 90% of organisations do one of these two things. So the second thing they do, which I call the slow track, is they still promote the people who are the most experienced or the most technical, and they say, oh, yeah, you do need some training. We'll send you off to a course. Let's do your development plan over the next year. What course would you like to go to? And you pick a course here and a course there. And they're great courses. I've run a lot of them. We're a day here, 2 or 3 days there. There's lots of great information in those courses. The trouble with that is most people really struggle to take what they've learned and put it into practice in an effective way. Okay, because there's a big difference between learning something and actually being able to do it. Right? So that then still leaves us with the same sort of challenges. Right? What it means is that the managers are still growing quite slowly and often falling back into old habits. So that then there's no clear succession plans. The managers in these situations are not developing their team members well enough so that there's clear progress for people to come and develop. And therefore, they're not all performing at the level that they would ideally like to. So there's more likely to be more client issues. It's a struggle to get the business growth that people want, the organisations want. And then overall, for corporate organisations, for private businesses, the value of the business is lower. So what do we really want here? We want, and such a small percentage of the organisations that do this, you want a clear and effective transition plan where there's a clear understanding that it's different to managing people compared to doing your job, and give people clear process and how to go about doing this. Give them the systems and the structures and the support and coaching in order to develop them into people managers. So then as you're developing your managers and they're developing their teams, you've got clear succession, you've got continued growth within the people in their own development, which is very important for staff members, because we all want to see that we're growing, and when we don't, we're more likely to leave. So you get higher retention in these areas. You get more productivity. Gallup has shown, just in some information that came out last week, that they estimate that people who are moderately engaged to actively disengaged, right, the productivity drops enough that it costs 20% of the salary. I'll get more into that in just a moment. So that has a big impact on some costs. Right? And the thing is that it doesn't take any more time or effort. In fact, once you get this going, it takes less time and effort to get greater engagement and greater productivity. So let's continue to have a look at some of this with more of these costs that I mentioned. So one of the employees that came out from AIM is that one of the surveys that came out from AIM in their research is that 75% of employees left their jobs directly because of their manager. Okay, so the number one reason that they change jobs is because of their manager. And that means that the managers haven't been trained well enough to create an engaging environment. So that's costly in terms of the turnover. As I said, Gallup has shown that you can say 20% of salaries for people that range between moderately disengaged to actively disengaged which, by the way, averages 77% of employees. So that's 3/4 of employees are in this category where you're losing 20% of their salary in productivity. Some significant costs. When you get unwanted turnover, the lower end of the estimate is that it costs an organisation 150% of their salary. Employee theft is higher, and this is the cost per person, but it's higher when there's less engagement within an organisation. And this continues on. When there's lower engagement, when the managers haven't been trained to create this engaging environment, these are the types of things that it leads to that will cost. More industrial action, more absenteeism. And we're talking absenteeism here where people decide they don't want to come into work. It's not because they're really seriously sick, so they need a proper sick day. It's the extra days that they're not coming in because they don't feel engaged and motivated to come to work. And there's more costs with legal payouts and care work cover type claims. So it can be very costly from an organisational point of view. Okay? And wrapped up in all of that is the extra hours and stress and overwhelm that the managers themselves are experiencing. And that's something we also want to be able to change. So I've asked a lot of managers over the years how they're going and how they rate themselves in terms of their own performance. Right? And I find over 80% of the managers rate themselves low. They rate themselves 3 to 6 out of 10, where 10 is them at their very best. It's not perfect. So 10 is not about being totally perfect. It's just about thinking about themselves at their best. And yet most of the managers rate themselves between 3 and 6. They all want to be 96%, and I'm not sure why the others don't, but 96% say they want to be 8 to 10 out of 10 every day. But most of them don't know the specific steps, strategies in order to be able to get there. And they feel their organisation restricts them in certain ways from being at their very best. Okay. So what does this look like? When you're at about a 3 to 10, as these managers are describing themselves, I feel like they've got a high workload. There's lots of work to do, lots of it's channels through them. It relies on them checking to make sure that it's being done. But they have a low confidence, or their confidence goes up and down, particularly if it's around about 3, it's low. They're sort of second guessing themselves, not sure whether they're doing the right thing because they haven't been trained in how to be a people manager. They're often doing the hardest and most complex tasks in and around their area. And they're often also doing other things that other people in the organisation are asking them to do because they know that this manager, will get things done. But it's taking on extra work. They don't get time to be strategic. They get time to develop others and really build relationships. And they're heading towards burnout. And often at this level, they look at the best thing to do is actually leave and hopefully it'll be better somewhere else. Those that rate themselves more towards a 6 find themselves on a roller coaster ride. Sometimes they find their confidence is okay, yep, I'm doing this okay, and then something else happens or an overload of work comes in and their confidence drops off. And their confidence is related to things that are happening externally. They feel like they've got a little bit of information on how to be a better manager and leader because they probably had access to some courses or some information, some online learning, but they're really struggling to put them into place consistently. So they fall back into the old habits, and that's where they feel again like they're struggling and the confidence goes down again. And they feel like it's still a continuous busy nature of things happening all the time. They're reactive and not being proactive. But what we really want is managers that are in that 8 to 10 out of 10 with consistently very high confidence, that knows how to go about empowering and engaging their team members. And yet they're still able to hold them clearly accountable for what they need to be responsible for. And they know how to add strategic value to the organisation and how to be proactive. So that's the picture that managers tell me that that they want to be when they see themselves as 8 to 10 out of 10, but very few know how to get there. Now, here's what's happening for most of the managers. See if this happens for yourself or in your organization. Do you say to yourself, or people in your organization who say, oh, it's just easier to do it myself? Or if I do it, I know it'll be done right. Okay. But this means you're actually sabotaging yourself. They're sabotaging themselves from being the very best as a leader, because you're pulling yourself back into the day-to-day doing stuff rather than being a manager and a leader. Okay? So it's one of the key things that needs to change. What about these things? These are some of the things that managers think is the right thing to do. They're actually not. So do you or your managers protect the team from failure or things going wrong by stepping in and taking over and fixing the situation or doing the harder tasks? Do you give your team members answers to all of their questions? Doesn't that seem like the logical thing you should do? Give them answers to all their questions? Well, to be a really great manager, you don't do that. What about telling people exactly what they need to do? This is what most people do. I've done it. I know how to do it really well. My bosses, my team say, you're great at doing this, so I should tell other people exactly what they need to do. Unfortunately, it doesn't lead to an engaging team. And then what happens is that you're taking all of these things on, so you're extremely busy with all the elements that are going on. Some people describe themselves as a bottleneck, or that how everything needs to channel through them. And you're reacting all of the time. So these things can seem like they're the most logical things to do, but it's something that we need to stop doing, because they're actually going to reduce your effectiveness.
I don't know. Maria just asked me to join.
And if you keep doing it this way, then you're going to lead to only more levels of overwhelm and potentially burnout. So let me stop sharing and just take a few thoughts or comments in the chat here. Who has experienced some of these things that I've just been describing? Some of these thoughts, some of these actions?
Yeah, I can relate. Having to do that now.
Yes. Which one stands out the most for you, John?
Well, as a sort of technical expert, having to sort of step in, but I think what you said is true there. I try to delegate as much as I can, to a point at which others can or can't pick up or have got time. And in the case where I think now is a bit of a special case, because deliverables are due, and then the team's sort of a little bit slower, and so then I've had to sort of step in to supplement their efforts. But in most cases, I tend to, let them work on their own. I think early on in my career. Sorry, yep.
There's a bit of a combination of those things going on at times there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think there's a recognition that, what you said needs to happen. And I reflect earlier on in my career, definitely was the mistake as well. As a newly promoted sort of senior engineer, and then trying to do too much, then quickly you learn that you need to delegate, otherwise you're just gonna not be able to survive, really.
Yep.
But then also recognizing that not everybody is built with the same makeup as you are as well, and just kind of just letting that go. So I guess if you hold them account to the same standards that you hold yourself to account, then you can tend to become a micromanager for sure.
Yes.
But you just got to let that go. And yeah, I've had to learn to let that go as well. So
yeah. And thank you for sharing. So letting go of those things is a challenge for many managers. So it sounds like that you're working through it with some degree of success, which is great to hear.
yeah. Yep. And I think as managers now, because I'm still on my journey, going through an executive MBA, just to share the group here. I think as managers, conversations, it's amazing how little data actually influences large organizations in terms of decision making. And as a analytics professional, I know that there are things that you can hide in the numbers as well. It's more that sort of participation, leadership, and conversations with other groups of leaders that will actually change or progress the organization. So just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and that's an example of so like discussions with other managers. It's an example of where many organizations and managers would like more time, more quality time to do that. They find they're so busy it doesn't happen to the extent or to the value that they would like. What about hearing from others? Any other thoughts, questions?
No, no questions, but I think all what you say is completely right. We normally, an operation supervisor, I run 6 of the 10 venues of Papiano, so it's quite high, like it's a really fast environment. But I think it's important for us to slow down and, listen to whoever wants to talk to you, or give them the 5 or 8 minutes that they need from you. And then you can learn more from that 8 minutes to whatever emails you have to reply or whatever. But I'm a big fan of delegation. Like I tell all my general managers that they cannot do everything by themselves because, like it's impossible. If I want to run all the 6 venues by myself, well, I'm not going to be able to do it. So I think it's really important. Actually, you have a kitchen leader here from one of my venues. You have a kitchen manager there, and then you have one of the general managers of the venue as well there listening, because I thought it was really interesting. So thanks for inviting us.
Oh, my pleasure. Great that they could be here. And it's great to hear you talking about the delegation. And one of the things that I find as an example, and this comes up a little bit later as well, is that most managers will talk about wanting to be able to delegate, yet very few do it consistently or do it well. And they try it initially, and maybe you've had some of this experience, is that they realize I'm getting overloaded, I've got to share, I can't take all of this on. They give some work to somebody else to do. They don't do it as well or as quickly as you would do it. And so then they get into this point of struggling. Well, I want to delegate, but when I delegate, is it going to be done properly? How do I handle all of that? And so that's an example of something that's often not done well in the training and development of managers, and that needs to be improved significantly for people to be on the fast track to be an effective leader.
Yeah, the worst mistake is just expecting they're gonna do exactly the same of you do. So yeah, I think that's just the worst mistake, and I learned it by the hard way. But I know they, nowadays I know they will be able to do it better than me. So I trust them. I follow up, and that's it. As long as the job gets done, that's it. It's all it matters.
That's right. That's exactly right. So it's good to hear that you have moved through some of these things and worked through the trial area yourself in developing these things. All right. Any other questions that people want to ask before we keep moving? Happy to keep moving forward? Okay, great. We'll go back to the slides then. All right, so how did this happen? We'll just quickly look again at summarising how do we get to this stage. Well, the key thing, firstly, that people get thrown in the deep end is because organisations see when there's a gap, we need another manager, either because we're growing or somebody has left. The focus becomes on quickly filling the roles, right? So they'd rather get people in quickly than to think about getting the right person and setting up the right training and development structure for them. And then also what can go through the organisation is, well, let's just see how they go. I hope they work out. Let's not train them because they might leave and then we've wasted our money. You're actually wasting your money by not training them, and waiting or seeing how long that they go on struggling with in the situation of not being trained. And then there's where they give them a little bit of training on the slow track, but a course here and a course there, without really checking to see what have they learned and how are they implementing it. And the organisation, the managers can know that, yeah, it would be good to be able to give them more of this development and more coaching, but that's too expensive. Right? So and they may have seen, some senior management gets the one-on-one coaching and what that costs, and they say we can't do that across all of the different managers that we've got at all of the different levels. And that's something now that there's different options to make that much more cost-effective and available to different people. The other one here is also that they equate technical expertise with management expertise. They haven't thought through that managing people and getting them engaged is different from being able to do the task in your area of expertise. Okay? And of course, what we want is the fast track, where they're set up with the development plan ahead of time. You invest in ongoing development, not just a course here or there, or a couple of online things. It's over months and many months and weeks that it continues to develop, so that they can do things like delegate effectively and do that within a short period of time, and grow and develop the engagement in the team. So what does it look like to start doing this differently? So in an overview, what we want to be able to look at for the leadership development model is having areas around self-leadership, which is understanding your identity and your strengths and weaknesses and your authentic leadership style. Most managers don't stop to think about that when they're thrown into being a manager. Understanding what impacts you and the impact that you have on others. And this includes work style and different elements of emotional intelligence. Then in people leadership, we've got the leap, which is what I call the letting go that Chung was talking about. It's being able to stop yourself from doing things or getting involved in the doing and fixing and putting out the fires, and then be able to oversee what's happening. But a key foundation of that is being able to build trust. And Maria mentioned that when we were talking before, how important the trust is. Okay? And most managers haven't actually stopped to think about.
Can I just share something? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
When we talk about trust, I think it's important that I guess for the ladies and and the gentlemen is my experience is trust. For me, trust is easy to give. Difficult to give, but easy to lose. So for me,
Yes.
like earning trust is really difficult for me to trust you. Okay, it's gonna take a long journey, but it's really really easy for me to to stop trusting someone. I don't know if that's a mistake or not, but that's I don't know how I am.
Yeah, that is a brilliant observation, and it's very similar for most people. Exactly what you described is similar for most people. And therefore, if you think about it, as a manager and a leader, if I'm not aware of whether I'm doing something that builds trust or that breaks trust, I can do an activity without meaning to that breaks in trust, because it's easier to break than it is to build over time. And that has an impact on the engagement and the effectiveness of you as a leader, because the trust isn't being built the way that it needs to be. And then the next level is strategic thinking, strategic value. How do we align the team and then align the team within the broader organisation? And strategic acumen is about how am I adding value outside of just getting the day-to-day things done? And they're areas that can significantly impact your opportunities for career progression and promotion and bonuses and how much you get paid. So what should we be doing instead? So the first key thing is to start to think of leadership development is a set of skills. Okay, there's skills that you need to practice to improve on. It's really, the simplest way to think about it is similar to learning a guitar or to dance or to play tennis. I've fairly recently taken up dancing lessons with my partner. So I'm learning what it's like to learn how to dance. And I know I need some guidance, and I know I need some practice. We've been to some workshops where I've had several hours on the weekend, and I learn a lot. But 2 weeks later, I've forgotten most of it. I couldn't do it again. So I need to go all the time to get that practice. Does that make sense to people? Yeah. So it's thinking about if, tennis is another one that people, or golf, sports can be similar areas. What would you need to do? You need to be able to get some guidance and then practice, and then get some feedback and then get some more guidance and keep going with the practice. Okay. It's not something that you can just read a book, or you can go to a one-day course or watch a video and then instantly you become a brilliant, fantastic leader. You've got to work at developing these skills. So here's 3 steps that can really help you in this area, and you can see how you're going with this. So I'll give you the outline of the 3 steps, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail. Please feel free to jump in and ask any questions. So the first thing that we need to be able to do is create a team environment that is based on trust and is psychologically safe. So we've already started talking about that. Maria's given us some good examples and insights. Then we need to be able to use proven leadership processes for some key things. We've spoken a bit about delegation. And so delegation is an example. Most people, when I talk to them about what they do to delegate, a couple of key things come out. One, they don't use the same process each time. They do something different each time, just as they think about it. And secondly, the way that they go about it is actually mostly ineffective. For example, the way that most people go about initially delegating is that they give detailed instructions to the other person as to what they need to do. So they're talking 80, 90% of the time. The person who's actually got to do the task barely says anything, maybe nods their head and says yes at the end. And almost all the time when you do it that way, you don't get a very good result. So most people who are doing delegation are doing it in a different way each time, and then the main things that they're doing are actually ineffective, and they don't know that. And the same thing applies with giving effective feedback. Most managers can't define what effective feedback is, how to handle difficult conversations, what it takes for people to be at their best. Just some of the examples. So there's clear, proven process on how to do this, but most managers don't know. And then it's about developing your skills. So it's not a look at it once, do a course once, and then you'll be perfect at it. It's about getting guidance, practicing, getting more feedback, more reflection, practicing, going on just like you would with a tennis coach, just like you would with learning to play the guitar or going to dance lessons. So you can gradually improve. Okay. So it's critical to be able to get that confidential level of guidance and support and coaching to improve your leadership skills. You can do it on your own. It just takes much longer. Like my experience, I learned more in 6 to maybe 12 months, way more than I did in 7 years of trial and error of trying to figure it out myself. So let's have a look at a little bit more detail in each of these. And then please, again, feel free to jump in and ask any questions. So the key thing here, there's quite a bit of research out there. Google's done one of the biggest studies showing that psychological safety is the #1 factor for a high-performing team. And now in Australia, we've got very specific legislation that says psychological safety is the same as physical safety, and we must create these environments. Which is really good for helping us to create a high-performing environment. It's just that most people don't know what to do to create psychological safety. Okay. And the key foundation of psychological safety is building the trust that Maria was talking about. And as I said earlier, most managers aren't thinking about it this way, so they don't understand when they're building trust or when they're not building trust. And managers think they are building trust with the research that's come through from Leadership IQ for the Neuro Leadership Institute. says that employees don't agree. Okay? They contrast results. They say that most managers focus on tasks, results, getting things done. They do not focus on relationships and building trust and psychological safety, which is what we need to turn around. But the key thing there is that managers think they're doing it, but their team members say they're not doing it. Right? So we've got a mismatch there. Now, there's lots of small actions that can break trust. And as Maria said, it's easier to break. It takes longer to build up. One of the examples that I give that happens so regularly is when managers make a time to have a one-on-one conversation with one of their team members, and then they're late, they change the time, they cancel the appointment, or they forget about it. As soon as you've done that twice, you have broken trust. Right? And you can justify it. Every manager does. I've done it where I say, well, something came up. It was really important. What that means, though, for your team member is your team member says, well, I'm not important because something else was more important. And when you get them feeling that they're not important, that's not building a strong relationship or building trust. So there's some of the things to think about around psychological safety. And what's the way to create this? It's about having quality conversations. And they don't have to be huge, long conversations. Again, I think it was Miriam said earlier, 5 to 8 minutes. It can be as short as that, as long as there's the quality and the real active listening and genuine focus on that interaction. It's about knowing how to do that. So, using the proven leadership processes. Most managers don't think about having these proven methods and strategies that they can rely on and repeat and do over and over in a way that's effective. And you don't even have to come up with new ones yourself. They're all out there. There's plenty out there to show how to effectively do the key skills that you need to for being an effective leader. So it's about knowing where to go and get these, and then it's about putting them in place to build the skills. As I said before, just because you know the steps and the process doesn't mean that you're immediately going to be perfect at it. You've got to work through it, and you've got to be prepared to be a little bit uncomfortable initially, like I was and still am to some extent when I'm learning dancing, to be able to just sit with that discomfort and work through the process until you get to be able to do it effectively, and then you'll see how well it works, and then you can repeat it instead of having to do it ad hoc or reinventing it each time. Okay. And when you know that you've got proven processes for each of these areas, it fast tracks your leadership growth and development. And then you're having a much better impact on your team, so the performance of your team goes up and they're more motivated and engaged. If you think about it from a different perspective, if you were building a house, would you want a builder who figured things out as they went along? Or would you want someone who used a planned and proven repeatable process? You want your plans when you're building. Well, when we're building and developing a leader, we should be doing the same thing, giving them the same opportunity. So we want to be able to give the managers these proven and repeatable processes so that they can give effective feedback. They even get to know what it is, what it looks like, how much positive feedback should they give, how much constructive feedback, what are the key steps in delegating effectively, dealing with conflict, etc. That's the way to creating high performance. There's a big difference there from ad hoc to using proven processes. And then it's about making sure, as I said a few times, that you're continuing to focus on growing those skills, and that the managers are thinking about developing their people leadership and engagement skills rather than just delivering on tasks and results. It's about understanding the people management skills and then investing time in developing those skills. so that you can continue to be important. Think about it in terms of looking at sports people. How do sports people and teams get to be at their best? They don't do it on their own. None of them do it on their own. They've all got coaches, multiple coaches, different types of support. Most of them have also got psychologists or mental performance coaches as well. They want to get to their best. They know that they've got to get this input from others and guidance as they're building the skills. Yep, we don't really think about it the same way when we're trying to develop leaders within organizations, but that's what we need to do. An example here is about understanding what authentic leadership is and developing your own authentic leadership statement. Most people haven't done that, especially in the early years of their management career. Some never do it, is to document what authentic and effective leadership looks like for you. Yet when you do that and get that clear, it gives you such guidance and purpose in how to go about being an effective leader with your own individual values, strengths, and understanding your weaknesses. So the way to do this is to get some sort of an accountability partner, right, like the sports people would, to help guide you into developing your leadership skills. So there's some things to think about. 3 areas that can really help you to fast track your development, or maybe it's for other people that you know are in your organization. So a few things just to consider moving forward. Right. So I've run many of these. Also run 1 day, 2 day, 3 day leadership courses, as I've said before, and people take away the information and think, yep, I'll be able to do this myself. And how many of them actually do that? Very few. You get busy, you get caught up in things, and so most people who try and do it themselves don't. Okay, so just have a think about, for you, your organization, your team, what would it cost you? What would it cost you if some of your managers burn out because of the way they're approaching things? What does it cost you for yourself or others to have that confidence going up and down, or feeling part of what's called imposter syndrome? What does it cost you individually or organization if you feel like it's a very slow growth, yourself or the company, and for promotion? What if you're in a similar position in another 3 years? Would you be happy with that? And what's it worth to go the other way? To have managers, yourself, consistently high confidence, highly performing, highly engaged team, and adding strategic value to the organization. So that's trying to encourage here that people take this away and do something with it. So one of the options is the work that I do. And I have this Engaging Leader Transformation Program, which is an outcome-based program. And what that means is it goes across a period of time, and it's about transforming you and improving you into an engaging leader. We work with you as that happens. It's not about, here's the content, here's the workbook, after you've done a day or two, then off you go, good luck. It's about working with you over a period of time. So it includes online video-based training, 6 modules that come out over 12 weeks, but you actually get 12 months access to that. And you submit feedback and activities so you can grow and learn on the leadership activities. You get some one-on-one coaching sessions, including that as well. And then you get weekly live group coaching sessions for 12 months. And you get a private mastermind group in order to help you with questions, and you can come to me as well anytime. So this is what I put together. So for organizations, it doesn't cost anywhere near as much as having ongoing one-on-one coaching at sort of senior executive level, which I know can be very expensive. So these are things for you to think about going forward. And just to make sure that it's easy as possible, it's guaranteed. You get it risk-free. You can try it. If it's not for you, then you get your money back. It takes as little as 2 hours a day. 2 hours a week, over a week, for you to put in and to learn and grow, as long as you're doing that consistently. So if you or anyone you know would be interested, we can make a time to have a chat. and tell you more about how this works. Just to give you an idea, a couple of people there, I'll let you read that. It's Alex, who's developed his confidence, got a couple of promotions and moved through to creating significantly high performing teams in his roles that he's had across several years. And another one, which is always very interesting, I've actually got a couple of new clients in a similar situation, people who have done MBAs and yet have found the coaching that we do very, very valuable and beneficial because it takes that high level concepts from an MBA, even an MBA in leadership and innovation, one of the people I'm talking with, and we talk through the specific things to be applying and doing in specific situations, which most people have found doesn't, MBAs don't quite get down to that practical, specific level of help. So back over to you, an opportunity for any questions, and I'll just put this up. You can contact me anytime with any further questions or to book a chat. But thoughts and questions, over to you now.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise, I guess, you could be an effective leader, but if the culture within your organization isn't as progressive as you are, then there's only so much you can do.
Yes, that's correct. So it is somewhat limited by the culture and the environment that you're in. So there's a couple of things to think about there. Firstly, from a positive perspective, one is it's been shown that psychological safety and engagement applies down to a group team level. So as a starting point, you can still create high engagement and psychological safety for your immediate team, right? And so that might be different to other parts of the organisation, but you can do that. It's a little bit harder, but it certainly still can be done.
Yeah.
Now, there's two things that can happen from there, is that it can have a ripple effect out to some of your peers and others start to see what's happening with your team and how happy and engaged they are, and they want to know more. So that can then be a little ripple effect to get out to the organisation. Or it can be also that literally the senior management start to see that there's possibilities in doing things differently, and then you might get someone at the very senior management level who's then looking to drive some positive change. Unfortunately, reality is sometimes it doesn't all work that way, and certainly on occasion, some of my clients have created a positive environment for their team and found that there's still what they would call a values clash with the culture, not the right fit. So then it becomes about finding an organisation where that is the right fit for you.
Yeah. And I guess it's also about that sponsorship. I think the last point that you touched about, how do you gain sponsorship within the organization that you currently work for, or external to the organization? So industry level engagement, I guess, is the other piece.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a combination of the level of confidence and presence and influence you have as leaders, which are some of the leadership skills that we're talking about developing here. It's also a factor of the right fit within the organisation. So there has to be a connection between, say, you and a senior executive person to get that sponsorship. If their values, how they see culture is very different, then that's a big challenge, because you can't you can't force change onto other people. You can do some influencing, and ultimately their decisions are up to them.
Yes. And one last question for me is, so I guess if the aspirations to be on a board someday, what are the skill sets a bit different? Or how do you see that? Or based on the people that you've sort of coached before, how many of them are at board levels? What do you see is that sort of difference between, an effective leader and then transitioning to that sort of board position?
Yeah, it's a much smaller percentage that are on boards, but I've got probably 20-25% of my current executive coaching clients are on boards, some multiple boards. The key thing there, if you remember that triangle of leadership development, the really key thing there is the development of the strategic leadership skills.
Yep.
Okay. And it's something that most managers and leaders just put to the side totally to start with, because they're just trying to figure out how to deal with the workload and those initial phases, trial and error of getting things done. In order to get to be senior executives or onto a board, you've got to be able to understand what is strategic leadership. What does it look like to be proactive and add strategic value outside of your immediate team and your immediate area of expertise? Okay. So a couple of quick examples of people that I'm working with now, just high-level examples, because obviously it's confidential, anything that I talk about with them. So there's a CIO that I'm working with, and he's on the board, and one of the things that we're working on is that he contributes in the board meetings to things outside of technology. So for years, when it comes to the technology, he gives his presentation and then he's being quiet when the other stuff's talking. Now he's getting involved in asking questions, clarifying, throwing out ideas right across the board. And some of his ideas, such as one in marketing, has been taken up as an example. And I'm doing a similar sort of thing with a financial organization with the COO, who's an accountant.
Yeah.
So instead of just being the person who provides the numbers, now we're working on what do the numbers mean, and what's that story, and how does that impact the organization at a broader level. Now that for most people, that takes some time, and also initially they struggle with, well, what is strategic? They're so caught up in the day-to-day, it's hard for them to even understand what strategic thinking is and involves. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Pleasure. Other questions or thoughts?
No, really, no. But thank you. Thank you for sharing this time.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for your input, both of you. Hopefully you found that beneficial.
Yep.
Fantastic. Right. Well,
just one question, Michael. Are you sharing this recording or not really?
Yes, yeah, I'm happy to share the recording.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I'll send it out to all the people that registered. I'll send out opportunity to get a link to the recording.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here. Lovely to meet you.
Bye-bye. Nice to meet you.
All the best. Have a great day.
Thanks, Michael. See ya.
Bye.